Hey artists, we're going to make these amazing winter polar bears in scarves today. Follow along with me and I'll show you how to create your own.
I am so excited to draw these bears. So when I look at Sandra Diekman's example, she has her bear's face turned a little bit. So it's like when we draw that round bear shape face, she has him kind of looking that way. And so what we do is we kind of put a little curve line going here and here, and these are just guidelines that are going to get erased. But it's going to help me see that, when I'm drawing the polar bear's nose down here, it's going to be along this line, kind of turned a little bit to the right. So if this is his nose, and then I have the part where his nose comes up here, then his eyes are going to be located here on this line that I put, and like the top of his eye. And we'll see that this way it looks like his face is turned a little bit to the right. So it's like this little polar bear guy, and then we could put his big bear ears. But if we're wanting to have our face turned a little bit, that's how we would do it. If you want your polar bear looking straight forward at you, you're going to be thinking more of his face being divided, coming forward like this. And so then the eyes would be looking straight forward. And then his little bear nose would be just going straight. So you're going to decide if it's easier for you to think about drawing your polar bear looking straight forward like this, or having that turn like she did. And these guidelines, when you draw it kind of to the right, can help you make that 3/4 angle where their head is just slightly turned. And I might even have like this part of his face might be turned so it might look a little bit thinner right there as he's turned that way. So that's going to be your choice of how you want to try to sketch out your polar bear. So what we're going to do is have a piece of gray paper, and I am going to go ahead and sketch out that circle shape up here for his head. And I'm going real light because I want to erase this, but also because I want you to be able to see it on my video, I have to push dark enough that you can see. But on your paper, very, very light. And then I'm thinking about, here's the center of the face, so I just want to remember this is the center, and then this is the middle this way, and that helps me to place things where they need to go. And so I see in the picture of the polar bear I'm looking at, and I will have pictures of polar bears printed out for you to look at, I see that those ears are rounded and kind of come up and round down here. And then I'm going to go the same distance on this side and go up and come down. And I can put that little spot where the little part of the ears opened up. And the next thing I'm going to try to draw are the polar bear's eyes. And polar bears don't have super big eyes. They're kind of small and round. And so if this is the location I draw the eye on this side, I use these guidelines to know I want to go about that far away on this side and about that high up on this side to make them even. And then I'll leave that little shine in his eye and just kind of sketch that in so I can see that's going to be my polar bear eye. And it looks like they kind of have like a little ridge that comes down over his eye. And I'm going to draw that same little ridge around this eye coming up, and they have kind of a little ridge of fur going that way. Now I feel like his nose is the biggest, boldest part, and he's got these big nostrils in his nose. And then I see it kind of curves up like this and comes down like this. And then it curves this way. And then he's got this kind of dark line there in the middle. And I'm just gonna kind of color that in. So that's gonna be his nose, and then it comes up like that. And then the line comes down here. And we've got his mouth coming kind of like this. And then I see this shape under his mouth kind of goes a little more this shape. And so we can kind of play and change. And this is why I said we draw nice and light. We can kind of change the shape of his face a little bit, because their face tends to kind of go in a little bit. So we can bring that in and get more of that bear-shaped face. I might round those up a little bit. And I'm starting to like the shape of my little polar bear. And he's kind of got this floofy neck that comes down. And then the next thing we're going to draw is his scarf. And so I'm thinking about, maybe I don't want that line right there because I want to have his little scarf. So I'm going to think about how a scarf might come down and go across. And then the little piece of fabric might come out like this, and we'd have it kind of go across. And then we might have this side come down, and we might have it kind of wrap around to another area. And then I also think about, when I'm drawing a scarf, the piece that folds down and hangs down here. And like here. So then we've got the scarf, and then we'll have his big berry body come down. And I like the way my guy's looking. I've got my bear. I've got the scarf drawn coming up around his neck, and you can add some extra fabric coming around. We've got his face sketched out. And now that we have the face sketched out, we can get rid of the guidelines for our bear. And as you look, you can always kind of go in and change things a little bit, just to kind of make him look how you want. And once you have him sketched out with his scarf, you're ready to add some color. Okay, so I've got our white paint ready. And what we're going to be doing is adding white paint thinner where we see more of the gray tones, and that way this gray paper will show through. And where it's really white, we'll put thicker white paint, and then we'll add black to make some of those really dark gray shadows, and we'll add black to the eyes and the nose and those little spots in the ear. What I did want to point out, because as we draw, we tend to look at it and make some decisions. I noticed that in the example from the artist, that she had his scarf really up, really bundled tight around his neck, and I have it kind of down lower. So if you wanted to make that thick scarf come up a little higher, you could. It's just making my scarf get really, really big, which I think is fun because he's a winter bear and now he's extra cozy. So now I've got lots of scarf that I'll be able to color and work with. So the white is going to be focused on my bear and on my bear's body down here. Okay, I'm going to start with my bigger brush first, and I'm just going to start patting some white And I'm going really thin at this point because I want to be able to go back and make some parts bright white. And so if I keep this thinner, it's kind of letting that gray show through, and I can add the brighter parts after. So I'm going to scoot that up a little bit and get all of his body down here, around his little scarf. Maybe he's got some fur poking through right there. All right, let that kind of dry off down there, and I'm going to concentrate up here on his ears. So I'm kind of just putting the paint on real light at first, and then I can go back and I can add more texture. See, I know this part of his nose is gonna have lots of white fur. I see lots of fuzzy fur right there. And so he's starting to look kind of silly right now, but we're gonna be adding some different color. Like I'm gonna take a little drop of black, and I'm going to just start to make that kind of shadow in his ear. And so I'm just kind of blending that through. I might even switch to my thinner brush for this part. Get a little itty bitty drop of black and just add that part of his ear that's got that darker shadow. And if that's looking too dark, I'll get some white and add that on top, and that was gonna mix it up and make kind of a more gray tone. And I see kind of a shadow right here in his fur, and I see that shadow is on this side too. So even though we know the polar bear's white, we're really adding in some different tones and tints and shades kind of going. So it's like right here I notice he's extra white, so I'm going to add some extra bright white above his eyebrows, and I'm just adding that texture in there. And then I know down here his nose gets really dark. And then the other part of his nose is just a little bit of a lighter black. So I can add some white in there. Kind of lighten that up. And there's a little bit of a kind of a shadow here. And I see a little bit of a darker shadow, so I can add some kind of gray here where I see that on his fur. So we're just gonna work on adding some of those shadows and the different colors and getting him all painted in with our bright white and kind of our darker grays, until we're satisfied with the colors we see. See a little bit of shadow here. I see a little bit of shadow here under his eye, so I might make this like more of a darker shade. And we're just gonna go ahead and finish painting him in. Now that we've got a lot of our bear painted, some things I was just gonna point out is that, you know, even though he's a white polar bear, he has a lot of gray, and we were putting in some gray kind of up, you know, around his eyes and around his nose here to kind of define the difference between his nose and that shadow that his nose casts over here, and some of that gray here inside of his ears. And so that's what really gives him a more realistic look. Now that we've got the white painted on here with his eyes, the nose, the ears, and we're all ready, we're gonna put this on the drying rack to dry, and then we can start painting his scarf. All right, so for the scarf, we're going to think about a pattern cloth that you would have for a scarf. You might have a striped scarf, you might have a checkered scarf, you might have a scarf that has polka dots. And so we're just going to be thinking about what kind of pattern you want for your polar bear scarf. You want some bright colors and probably a pattern that's going to repeat. So think about geometric shapes, like maybe it has little triangles and lines going across it, or maybe it's a polka dots or triangle back and forth. So think about geometric shapes and colors, and we are going to go ahead and start painting his scarf. I think for mine, I'm going to do polka dots and triangles. So I'm going to say that his scarf has orange polka dots. And I'm thinking about how the scarf kind of twists around his neck, so it'll kind of change direction as it goes around him. And so once you choose a stripe or a color, you want to go ahead and finish that all the way across before you wash your brush and do a different color. Otherwise, you'd be here all day washing your brush and switching every time. So since I know he's going to have these orange polka dots, I'm going to put those all over. Okay. And then next on this scarf, I'm going to put purple triangles. Okay, now that the scarf is dry and the bear is dry, we're going to use a black colored pencil to help us kind of define the outlines of the scarf. So we can go around the scarf and just really emphasize those folds in the scarf. And so it just is giving it a little bit more dimension, where we can kind of show where that scarf folds. And we can go down here and add some of the little threads. And if you want to grab colored pencils and add some of the threads in the color of the scarf, you could do that as well. Like I might take some yellow and just kind of show those little pieces of yarn that hang off the end. And maybe some purple too, because I had purple in the scarf. And then even a little bit of the orange might look nice. And that's just adding some texture and definition. You can draw some little lines where the folds are. All right, and I think that really gave us a little bit of definition to the scarf. And so something else we could do is use the colored pencil to define some of the little maybe tufts of fur up here. So you could just kind of make some of those little shadow marks to show where that fur has the little floofy pieces that kind of come out. You could further define within the ear a little bit more that shadow there. So the colored pencil can just really help us with some of this definition. Like I can add some little hairs around his eye, where his little eyebrow is. I could kind of smooth out the shape of the eye. Even adding some extra white to the eye like this. I think that's looking great. Can add a little definition around the nose, or maybe smooth the nose out a little bit if we want. So we can use the colored pencil just to add a little bit of texture. Where maybe our paintbrush, we couldn't get the same tiny details, the pencil can really help us out. I'm just adding some little wiggly squiggly lines to make things look more fluffy. I could do that down here too. Maybe show some of the layers of his fur down here. Kind of where his arms might be. And then once you're satisfied with that, we're going to grab the white colored pencil and complete the background, finishing touches, and you are done with these amazing polar bears. Okay, after adding a lot of the little black and gray details to really make his fur have a little more of a fluffy look, I'm gonna go ahead. I see in her example, she just had some really light lines that kind of went across her snowy background, so we can go ahead and put those in as well. And then I see that they added some mountains. So I'm going to add in that mountain with my white colored pencil. Let's see. Some of these are a little brighter than others. And then I'm going to add the snow up at the top. And some of the snow coming down on this mountain. And I might add another snow top over here. And then we can add some mountain tops over here as well. So we can add that snow texture. And I'm just using little short lines and then kind of breaking them up as they come further down the mountain. Adding that snow in. And then we can also use our white color pencil to add some little pieces of snow up here, just kind of floating around. And you might have bigger pieces and some smaller pieces. And we're just gonna kind of cover this background with snow. All right, now that I've sprinkled the background with snow and we've got the snow top mountains, if you want them to show up just a little brighter, you could just add a little light outline of gray just to kind of help them stand out against that paper. Just like a little shadow behind them. There we go. Just give them a little bit more definition. I'm just lightly going with the gray colored pencil. All right, and now I have this beautiful winter bear in his scarf with his snowy mountain background, and I can't wait to see the colorful scarves on the beautiful polar bears that you create.